Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to ice dye a poncho. This is a poncho which I purchased sometime in October of last year from a lady named Karen Klumperens. I'm so sorry, Karen, if you're watching this and that's not the way you pronounce your name. She posted them out on Facebook and that's where I purchased them from. I'm not even sure if she's still making these or where you can contact her unless you just look for her through Facebook. I bought about 4 of these, and this is my first one that I'm doing. I decided that maybe some sort of a fanfold design would look really cool in this poncho, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by using an old piece of sinew and a washable marker and drawing an arc on one corner of the poncho. This will give me a line that I can fanfold. It's hard to get the entire poncho in the shot, so I wanted to give you a look at what the poncho looked like undyed. Please excuse the wrinkles. I haven't put this one in the soda ash solution yet, but it has been pre-washed. I'm starting my fan folds down at that very bottom pointed area. I have both the front and the back of the poncho together, and that's where I'm drawing my line for my fan folds. So now I'm going to start fan folding this line, and once I have the line fan folded, I'm going to tie it up with some kite string. On either side of this initial line, I'm going to continue my fan folds all the way out until I reach the area where the hood is. I'm going to keep both layers of the fabric, the front and the back of this poncho together while I'm doing the fan folds. I'm choosing to use kite string for this poncho because I would like to do some sort of an incline and I want to allow the dye to move freely up and down the poncho. So I am not going to use sinew because I don't necessarily want any definition lines. And I find it easier to use kite string rather than rubber bands. If you'd like to use rubber bands, those work perfectly fine for this design too. I'm finished tying the body of the poncho and now I'm up into the hooded area of the poncho. Instead of continuing the fan folds, I'm going to scrunch this area and tie it with some kite string. So I have the poncho tied, but I'm going to work my kite string back down the poncho and tie it off where I started my initial line. Then, because this fabric is pretty thick, it's kind of the same fabric as would be on a sweatshirt or a hoodie, I'm going to place it aside and allow it to dry out completely before I begin applying the dye. I think that I get better color saturation and don't have quite as many big white chunks in the middle of my design if I apply the dye on a thick design like this when it's completely dry. If you'd like a little bit more information about this topic, I have a tie-dye blog out on my website which discusses why I usually dye some of my thicker items dry, and I have a link to my website down below this video in the description. The colors that I've chosen to use are some teal and purple colors. The first thing that I've chosen to do is place my fan folded portion of the poncho down inside of a piece of vinyl guttering. This fold is so long it won't fit in one of the normal size pieces of vinyl guttering that I use for a t-shirt, so I've placed it inside of a much larger or longer piece of guttering. Then I'm using a washable marker and I'm going to divide this portion of the poncho into 10 different sections. That's the amount of colors that I've pulled to use on the poncho. Then, because the poncho is completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and spray it with a little bit of soda ash solution that I've placed down inside of a squirt bottle. This will help the dye stick to the top just a little bit better. I'm going to apply one color to each one of the sections that I created with my washable marker. I'm also going to leave a little bit of a gap between each one of the colors because I want to allow some space for those colors to move when I incline the poncho. So here are the colors that I'm using in order. I'm using Cosmic Energy from Happy Cat Tie-Dye, Kingfisher Blue from Dharma, Dye Spin's Purple Twilight, which is a Dark Horse dye, Jade Green from Dharma, Velvet Orchid from Dye Spin, Mermaid's Dream from Dharma, Vintage Purple from Dye Spin, Teal Blue from Dharma, Hydrangea from Dharma, and Celadon from Dharma. I've sped several areas of this video up quite a bit so that the video didn't get too long, but if you'd like to watch it at a slower pace, in the settings section on YouTube, you can usually choose the playback speed and find a speed which is more comfortable for you. So initially, I had a plan all figured out how I was going to incline dye this poncho. But then when the poncho wouldn't fit properly inside of my shorter piece of guttering, I had to kind of change up what I was going to do. So since this is in a longer piece of guttering, I have a lot of guttering left past the end of this poncho. So if I just went ahead and placed the ice on top of the dye like I normally do and then inclined it, all of my ice is going to run off. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of dry soda ash over the top of this part of the dye and add on some ice. In a few minutes, I'll go ahead and figure out a way to incline it. So to incline this poncho, I'm using some items which I purchased from the Dollar Tree dollar store. I'm using a wire, I think they call it a trash basket. It's probably about 3-4 inches high, maybe a little bit taller, which I've turned upside down and I've put at the end of the guttering. Then I need to add some dye to the hoodie part of this poncho, so I've placed just a plastic container underneath to catch my dye runoff. Then I'm going to place the hoodie portion inside of a wire basket, which I purchased from the Dollar Tree dollar store. And I've placed another wire basket underneath. I've placed it upside down underneath so that it keeps this hood up out of the muck, which, by the way, all muck is the runoff from the dye that's mixed with the melting ice. I'm going to give the hood portion a quick spray of soda ash solution, and then over the top of the hood, I'm going to add Celadon, Hydrangea, and Teal Blue, which are all Dharma Trading Company colors. I'm adding a little bit of dry soda ash over the top and some ice. So I have the poncho at an incline. But normally when I incline areas, the area where I started my fan folds is the area that's at the top of the incline. So this one is going to be the opposite. The area where I started my fan folds is what's at the bottom of the incline. So I'm a little curious to see how this one's going to turn out. This was a little bit precarious, so I couldn't really move it. I just had to leave it on my dye table for a few days. I pulled the piece of guttering down where it was barely hanging over the edge of my dye table, and I placed a plastic tub on top of a 5-gallon bucket to catch any of the runoff that was coming down off of the piece of guttering. I also placed an old pickle container down at the end of the poncho just so that it wouldn't slide. So after the first layer of ice melted, I had quite a bit of undissolved dye left sitting on top, so I added a second layer of ice. Because of the height of this poncho, I can't add a whole lot of ice to a couple of the areas right in the middle part of the poncho. So after I added the second layer of ice and it melted, there were still just a few little areas that had some undissolved dye. So I just added a few little pieces of ice to those areas and allowed the poncho to process for about 48 hours after all the ice melted. Then I took it to my utility sink and I started rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. I untied the poncho, warmed the water up to hot, and continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the poncho. Since this fabric is so thick, I went ahead and just soaked it. I added some really hot water to my utility sink, a little bit of Blue Dawn dish detergent, and then just allowed the poncho to soak. When my water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the poncho along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed and dried the poncho and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks pretty cool. In this photo, I have the poncho laying flat, and so you can see the design a little bit better. The sides of the poncho aren't exactly the same size, meaning it's not an exact square. The poncho isn't. And then the top or the hood portion is a little bit more narrow at the neck than it is at the very top. As far as the design goes, I think it looks pretty cool. I really like the fan folds, and I like the dye movement. When I look at this poncho, the first thing that comes to mind is a peacock. And I think the colors go really well together. I like the teal and the purple. So I tied this one up and then I left it until it dried out, and it actually sat there for several weeks. So I'd kind of lost track of which side was the front side and which side was the back side. When I look at both the front and the back next to each other, I applied the dye to the back side of the hoodie or the poncho. The colors on the back are just a little bit more vivid in a couple areas, and then I have the darker streaks where the dye ran down the piece of guttering on the front side of the hoodie. But I think both sides look really pretty, and you wouldn't really notice that the dye was applied to the back side unless you could see both the front and the back right up next to each other. I like the color splits in this too. I think there are some really pretty splits that came out of some of the teals. Remember, I also inclined this poncho with my initial tied line being down at the bottom, which I normally don't do that. And I can see some differences. You know, you can see it pretty much right up in the upper portion of that poncho where the purples stream down, and there's a little bit more of a definite line where I started that one purple shade. I think it's kind of a cool effect though. I also kind of like the effect of it being a little bit lighter up at the top of the poncho. I used some lighter colors on the scrunch portion of the poncho, and then the first couple colors right up at the top are a little bit lighter. That paired with the fact that the lower portion of the poncho is the part that was at the bottom of the incline, the colors get darker as you go down. So it's a little bit of a gradation, which I think is kind of interesting. So overall, I really think this poncho looks cool, but what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.